Hi, I'm Gary Stearman, and I'm inviting you to the Homeward Bound Prophecy Conference, May 19th through 22nd, 2022. You'll be blessed, and you'll want to be there because things are happening in this world right now that you need to know about. To register, see the number on your screen and give us a call, or check our website, prophecywatchers.com. Join us. We'd love to see you.
I'll be there too.
He will. There's something you really need to know about. And the man who's going to tell you about it, you've heard before, but you've got to listen today. And I'd like to introduce a good friend of ours who has done a mountain of work on a particular subject.
Yeah.
Billy Crone, you have worked very hard to put together 2 books, which I have reviewed, by the way, and some DVDs on a subject that a lot of people may not be too familiar with.
Yeah, but guess what, Gary? They need to be equipped on it because it is permeating every aspect of our lives, whether people realize it or not. And I'm convinced that it has everything to do with Bible prophecy. And of course, we're talking about artificial intelligence. And right out of the gates, I will say this, and I don't think it's too obtuse of a statement, but I believe that the birth of artificial intelligence and its dissemination across the planet, which is happening right now on a massive scale, is just as big of a watershed prophetic moment as when Israel became a nation in 1948.
Wow.
And the reason why I say that, let me explain, is because why was it so important that Israel became a nation? Because the 7-year tribulation, the Jewish people are one of the major key players. And so just logically, you can't have the 7-year tribulation until you have the Jewish people back on the scene. Well, guess what? They are. 1948, they became a nation. That was the big watershed moment. Gary, I'm convinced, based on this research, that the global events that are mentioned in the 7-year tribulation, I'm talking a global economy, a global mark of the beast system, a global big brother system, a global tying of the governments together, the knowing what people say and do, and globally micromanaging the planet, even to the point when an order is given to worship the Antichrist, they will know globally what these people are saying and doing. Did they respond? Did they obey? You can't have enough people on the planet to hire to run that back-end system. It's impossible. But guess what? Artificial intelligence allows that to happen on a global scale for the first time in mankind's history. It's here now, which means those events, not just Israel, those events can now take place. It's here now. That's why it's a huge watershed moment.
You know, I opened my Bible before we came on to 2 Timothy chapter 3, and we all know this. This is what I call the front side of Bible prophecy. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters. The list goes on, and you've preached these words many, many times,
Yeah.
I know. That's the front side.
Yeah.
There will be perilous times, and men will be lovers of their own selves. The backside of all this is sort of the invisible side of Bible prophecy. Some horrific things go on in the background that allow men to change the world in a revolutionary way. And this is scary stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't know the Lord, if your faith is not complete, and you read about the AI invasion, as Billy puts it, you could get pretty frightened.
But you mentioned that passage, Gary. That's the tool that they're using to dupe people to go along with literally having AI, I'm not joking, control the planet. To the point where one guy called the Antichrist is going to be able to push the button and he's going to control everything. Economy, education, agriculture, any kind of monetization, entertainment, military, religion, the whole 9 yards. We cover it all. And it's here now. But how they're getting people to go along with that is that passage, lovers of self. It also says that society in the last days is going to love pleasure more than they love God. And that's how they're pitching AI. Let AI take over everything. It's going to produce this wonderful, dare I say, hedonistic pleasure society. You're going to be able to have so much more time on your hands. It'll manage your home. It'll manage your finances. It'll manage your transportation. It'll manage, even if you ain't got time for your kids or those elderly people, it'll even manage those people for you as well.
Yeah.
It'll manage the global economy. It'll manage the global stock market. It'll do everything for you as you just sit back and relax, like George Jetson. That's how they're pitching it. And our society that loves self and loves pleasure more than God is falling for it. That's how they're getting this done.
And Billy's going back quite a way, the Jetsons, and it was a super wonderful future. Everything is perfect. You conquered all the health problems. You have conquered the monetary problems. You've conquered social problems, transportation problems, and that's the big sell that's going on right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just go back to the transportation issue. I mean, that's how it's being pitched. Wouldn't it be great, Gary, if you could, you don't have to worry about driving your car. You could just sit back and relax. You could go back to texting because the car's driving itself. Or you could take a nap or, whatever. You don't have to worry about it. It'll just get you there.
Right.
But with all these aspects that we bring out, there's always, unfortunately, a negative side. And it has to do with literal micromanaging the planet, total global control, which the Bible says is going to happen in the 7-year tribulation. And just with the transportation, you go back to Matthew 24, when it says when the Antichrist goes up into the rebuilt Jewish temple, the abomination of desolation declares himself to be God. Paul talks about that in Thessalonians 2. And at that point it says, those who are in the 7-year tribulation, your only option is to flee, run, get out of there. Well, I'm convinced now with AI taking over the transportation, and it's not just cars, Gary. AI is now being responsible for all the transportation. They're pushing for cars, for trucks, semis. Most people don't realize, Gary, right now, there are semis across America that are shipping information. There are no human drivers. It's already here. It's not coming, it's already here. They're also doing the same thing to planes, to boats, subways, trains, you name it. Everything's being automated run. Now put yourself in the Antichrist shoes. You don't want anybody to go anywhere. You don't want them to flee. You don't want, you want to make sure that they stay and do exactly what you're going to hold that as leverage. You're going to keep them where you want them. Gary, that can happen right now, right? To the point when the order is given, when Jesus says, if you find yourself, unfortunately, not saved, you're in the 7-year tribulation, and you need to hightail it out of there, guess what? You ain't going nowhere. And the Bible says that at that point, it's going to be a bloodbath. The Antichrist is going to go on a slaughter fest, if you will, and he's going to murder people. And I think part of it is because people aren't going to be able to go anywhere. Even just something as simple as AI taking over the transportation industry has biblical global ramifications.
So we're talking about something that covers the entirety of society,
Right.
not just one or two categories, but everything, including military, financial, political, even educational.
Right, which means it's total global control of all these things for the first time in mankind's history. And when you read the book of Revelation and other Bible prophecy passages dealing with the 7-year tribulation, this is what you need. You need to be able to micromanage the planet. Gary, it's not coming, it's here. That's why we call this not just the AI, it's the AI invasion. It's already here, not coming, and it's invading every sector just in time for the 7-year tribulation. And again, here's the term that they're using to describe AI in the AI industry. This is their term, not mine. And they say AI is the new electricity. And they go, well, what's that? Well, here's why they call it that.
Wow.
And they're saying like, well, just like when electricity was invented, it was a game changer for humanity.
Sure was.
And it was a buzzword. People talked about it. Oh, hey, this new thing called electricity. I wonder what it could do, and it's going to bring utopia and all this stuff. And then it began to die down a little bit, but electricity didn't go away. What did it do? It went behind the scenes and began to run everything in the background to the point where you and I take it for granted. We don't even think about it. Electricity runs everything. They're saying it's the same thing, not coming, already being done with AI. It's the new electricity. Yeah, people have heard the term as, oh, let's wonder what they're going to do with AI. It sounds kind of cool, kind of neat, kind of eclectic. They don't realize it's not going away even after the term dies down. It is now going across the planet. And AI is running the back end of everything. We deal with the businesses, the finances, it's going to run your home, it's going to run your whole city, your shopping, your service, your entertainment, the media, the gaming, the agriculture, communication, education, medical. That was a huge thing. It's going to take over all the medical industry. Big Brother, you can think, it's even taken over the police force where they're doing predictive policing, military, religion. Gary, this is why we said it's the AI invasion.
Wow.
It is literally the new electricity. It's permeating the planet. It's micromanaging everything just in time for a global dictator to do his dirty deeds in the 7-year tribulation.
And it all seemed so wonderful. I remember the old Star Trek episodes. Doc had these little high-tech devices. And I'll never forget one episode, somebody required an operation, and there was an operational robotic procedure that was done, and bam, what would have killed us today, he was alive and well and walking, and you think, wow, that's great to have that kind of technology, but oops, you link something else to it, and that is, if this thing is smart enough to perform an operation, can it learn? Mm-hmm. And then can it join with others of its kind?
Right.
And after a while, do they begin to control things? That's the question you raise here. And I got to tell you, you need to know about this subject because Billy has gone very, very deeply into it, and it's going to affect your life.
Well, and again, Gary, I think certainly as Christians, we need to get equipped because, again, I'll say this, based on the research, I'm absolutely convinced that as the church, we got to get equipped on this AI thing because it's just as big of a watershed moment as Israel becoming a nation in 1948. And what's unfortunate, and why we were excited to get this resource out, 3 years basically of research in the background, is that we can get equipped now. We need to understand this thing called AI and how it's taking over the planet just in time for the 7-year tribulation.
Now, let's talk about Skynet. Well, sci-fi. You know, people have been predicting AI in sci-fi for at least 3 or 4 decades. And looking forward to this, and the good side of AI, artificial intelligence, is the helpful things that it can do.
Yeah.
The bad side is like Skynet, take over the world, control everything, as you put it, an Antichrist system.
Yeah.
And where are we there?
Well, we got one whole section just on military, Gary.
Okay.
It's all in the military. And it's not just our military, it's militaries around the world. And it's not coming, it's already being done. You mentioned Skynet, and I joke all the time, you want to know what's coming? Go watch the Terminator movies.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. It's like somebody is literally following a script, a Hollywood script. Now, we also know where it's headed because the Bible told us, you know, where it's headed ultimately. It's not good. And you talk about Skynet. Skynet has already been built, Gary. Most people don't realize it. Only they don't call it Skynet. It's called Project Maven. And we expose this.
Say that again.
Project Maven,
Wow.
M-A-V-E-N.
Tell us about that.
Well, and guess who helped the military do that? It's basically Skynet because it's the AI running all the military for the United States. And that means not just the administration, the back end, the supply chain, all that stuff. It's making the decisions in the warfare, including when to pull the trigger on nuclear weaponry and things of that nature. It sounds crazy. It's already here. Google is the one who helped the U.S. military build this Project Maven, which is basically Skynet, and to run the military. Now, what's interesting is Google began to develop them, and you got to understand a little bit of background. We bring this out in Google. Google admitted, and we got this on tape back in the day, the reason why they came into existence, this is from Larry Page, one of the co-founders, him and Sergey Brin. They admitted the reason why they're here is not to build another search engine. We already had plenty of search engines when they came along. They said, we're here to create AI. These are the same guys who, it's still in print, said we want to, quote, be like the mind of God. They want to know everything about everybody. Now, so these guys are now taking their AI and they're helping the military build this Skynet called Project Maven. Well, the employees got in a little bit of a ruckus, as the story goes, and said, we don't like using our talents and our AI to teach the military how to let AI basically make commands to kill people. So they backed out. Well, that's where Microsoft came in and helped them finish the job. But then you're thinking, well, hey, Google, that's great because remember they had this mantra that don't be evil? So surely they did that for great, wonderful, no. Google, it sounds crazy, Gary. Google now has patented they want to create their own robot army. I'm not joking. It sounds like it's a science fiction movie or conspiracy. It's not. So you got all that going on, but back to the
Wait a minute, I've got to stop you there. Whoa, what's this robot army gonna do?
Well, thank you, exactly. And why does Google need a robot army? Well, and I'm sitting there going like, well, you already said you want to be like the mind of God. Maybe if you're AI God that you want to control the planet with, if people get out of the line, then you got your AI robot army around to take. It's crazy, but this is literally what these people are doing behind the scenes.
I've got to stop you right there and say, what he's saying is documented. I mean, read it. I mean, you may sit there and shake your head right now and say, that can't be happening. It's happening.
It's happening, and it's happening on a global scale, and it's not just our country. It's militaries around the world. It's corporations around the world. It's not just Google. There's Microsoft. Facebook is another huge one. Amazon's another huge one, especially when it comes to the buying and selling aspect, which goes right into the mark of the beast system, and we document all that stuff. But back to the military. So they didn't just create Maven. You think, okay, so they have an AI to control the whole military. How are they going to do that? At the same time, they are taking the military equipment and they are allowing it to be run by AI. So that an AI general, if you will, a Project Maven, a Skynet, can literally control the battlefield. Gary, pick any kind of military vehicle you can think of, and I'm not joking, and it's not coming, it's already here. And you don't need humans to fight wars anymore. And it's not just America, it's militaries around the world. Pick a military piece of equipment, and they are unmanning them, and AI is controlling them. No people involved. So guess what? Now you got Project Maven that will be making the decision to send out all this military equipment. Then they're also at the same time developing what's called micro aerial vehicles, and these are miniaturized vehicles. It could look like a fly. They mimic typically insects like flies or dragonflies or things of that nature. And they're not coming, they're already here, and they demonstrate, and we share the actual military videos from the Navy, from the Army, and from the Air Force. And where they're actually equipped where they can fly into an area, and they carry a payload, and they could take somebody out in the back of the head. This is not coming, it's already here. Then they're also developing, I kid you not, militarized animals, where now they're making robotic animals like robotic cheetahs, robotic sharks, and we demonstrate all this, robotic jellyfish. There's no way to escape. And they're also arming them as well. Then, on top of that, they're making actual Terminator robots. It's not coming, it's already here, we document it. And I'm not joking, Gary, DARPA, if you're familiar with DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, for years has been developing what's called neuromorphic chips. Now, that's just basically, in a nutshell, a fancy way of saying a brain chip. And these brain chips that mimic the human cortex, they're popping into these robots, and they're basically, they said, the robot can learn and act on its own. And we demonstrate the videos, how far this technology is already come. These things can do backflips, they could even dance, they could, oh, I gotta share this, sorry, one more. Russia just came out with a video, which we share. Their Terminator robot is called Fedor, F-E-D-O-R. People go check it out, I'm not making this up. And Fedor can not only do push-ups, it can use power tools, and it shows it all on tape. It could drive a Jeep, and it actually shoots guns in both hands simultaneously, and it does not miss its target. Now, put all that together. You got these unmanned vehicles, every piece of military equipment think of. You got these micro vehicles. You got militarized animal-looking robots. You got Terminator robots. And then, guess what? You've already created Project Maven to control the whole thing exactly like Terminator, Gary, and it's already here.
And I was thinking, as Billy was talking, those little flying robots, those could be loaded with poison. And they go buzz, and they sting you on the cheek, and you're dead before you can swat them.
Right, sting you, or they come also, and this is the example from the Air Force. And we show it. I'm not making this up. And they go into they sneak into it's like a suburban area, like you're going into Afghanistan or one of those areas, and the guys are hiding out, whatever. It sneaks into the door behind the guy, and he's behind a gun looking out the window, right? And this MAV fly comes in, and it has a combustible payload. Pops in the back of the head, the guy's dead. It's the actual video.
I just had to open to Revelation 9
Yeah.
and verse 7. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were crowns like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men.
Yeah.
Could these be robots of some kind swarming across a battlefield?
Well,
we think of them as demons, a demonic horde, but couldn't a demonic horde operate in cooperation with AI vehicles?
Well, it's funny you mentioned swarm. Now, as creepy as the scenario I just described to you that's already here, Project Maven, basically Skynet, controlling every piece of military equipment that you can think of, jet fighters, submarines, tanks, you name it, on land, on water, underwater, micro air vehicles, mimicking insects, flies, birds, sharks, the militaries, and Terminator robots. They've also developed what's called swarm technology. We share from the Army, it's called the MAST program, Micro Autonomous Systems Technology. We also, with the Navy and the swarm technology, basically what it does is it allows all these individual AI-controlled military pieces of equipment to control, to communicate with each other, and then swarm the prey. One of the examples that we share from the Navy is they're putting it on their boats, and so they say that when they're patrolling the waters, it isn't just one AI unmanned boat that's chasing down a potential terrorist or threat to the bigger ships. No, it sends out signals to the rest of the AI boats, and they come together as a pack, as a swarm. And this is their term, like locusts.
Wow.
And they come and they surround the prey and basically tell them to stop, cease, go away, or we're going to take you out. No humans involved. This is the technology. The Army one that we show is these MAVs. They show an MAV spider, an MAV moth, and an MAV dragonfly. And they're working together. In fact, they're communicating with each other with the swarm technology. And in order for them to complete the mission, well, how are you going to get the spider where it needs to go underneath the door with its camera eyes to see what's going on in that room, to report it back to headquarters? Well, it shows the dragonfly coming by, scooping up the spider and dropping it off on the stairs that just starts going up and goes. It's crazy. You're thinking like, come on, this is not only, this can't be real. And then you're going like, oh, it's got to be a long ways away. Gary, it's already being used.
The books are called The Final Countdown, Tribulation Rising, AI Invasion. What's inside of these 2 volumes? Billy, you guys have absolutely worked very hard to document this phenomenon, which is almost unbelievable. If you didn't have all the documentation, it'd be hard to believe that there is such a thing as artificial intelligence. It's moving through society right now. It intersects your life.
Well, and that's why with the books, we also provided the DVDs, because it's one thing to read the information. It's another thing when you see it with your own eyes, when you see the news clips, when you see the examples from news around the world, the scientists, the think tankers, the interviews, the, dare I say, military, medical, it's all there. These people admit what they're up to. Unfortunately, most people aren't equipped of what the ramifications are on a global basis. And dare I say, Gary, a lot of people aren't, even in the church, aren't understanding this from a Bible prophecy point of view. But in the book of Daniel, chapter 12, Daniel tells us, I'm convinced, that what we're seeing right now, the rise of AI, artificial intelligence, is a sign we're living in what he called the end of times. And let me quote that passage for you. It's Daniel 12, and he says this, verse 4, but you, Daniel, close up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end. Oh, if I only knew what was the time of the end. How am I going to know I'm close to the time of the end? Here he is, keep reading. Many will go here and there, and the context is global.
Right.
And that's a whole nother study. We can go anywhere we want on the planet very quickly. Pick your transportation. We're there now. And he says there, and to increase knowledge. There'll be an increase of knowledge. In the Hebrew there, Rabbah literally means to multiply on a scale exponentially. Well, that's what's happened with knowledge. It's growing exponentially, out of control. We are immersed with so much knowledge today, Gary. We take it for granted. We got more knowledge than we know what to do with. And it's happening exactly what the Hebrew says, exponentially. It's multiplying out of control, including creating this AI. Let me give you an example. The average, just an average basic newspaper today has more information in it than a person would come across in their entire lifetime in the 17th century. And we don't just have one newspaper.
Right.
We got thousands of them at our fingertips. We got a normal watch today has more computing power than the original lunar lander that was on the moon. It's exponential. And then I'll just real quickly to speed it up, exponential growth. It used to take one full century for man's knowledge base to double. Every century it would double. What just came out from IBM, and we share their own graph, and it just goes exponentially. They said right now we're at a rate where knowledge is doubling. Man's whole store of knowledge is doubling every 11 to 12 hours. It's spiraling out of control. 2,600 years ago, God said in the book of Daniel, that's a sign that you're in the end of times. And it's not a good sign, meaning it's called end of, it's not the beginning of a great time, it's the end of time. Now what's wild is the secularists out there, non-Christians, they also believe that's what we're headed for. Except they don't call it end of time. The term they use is singularity. And singularity, and this is from the secular community, they say is when all this knowledge begins to create a super knowledge, an AI, that then begins to teach itself and then improves on that version of itself, and then that version of the improved version improves on the next version, and then that begins to go exponentially out of control, where they say, quote, it will take over all aspects of society, right, and, quote, destroy humanity. They don't call it end of times, they call it singularity. But guess what? They agree with what the Bible says, and they agree with what is happening on our planet right now. That's why we call it the AI invasion. It is invading every sector of society. And again, our point is, I'm convinced that you couldn't pull off the events that are mentioned on a global scale in the book of Revelation until AI, just like God warned about 2,600 years ago, appears on the scene. Gary, it's here now.
It's here now, and it's, if you're me, you're frightened. Well, not frightened, because I know who's really in control. God's in control. And by the way, your connection to Him through the Holy Spirit, through prayer, is the most powerful force on earth. I still believe that. We are not pronouncing the end of everything.
Right.
Our God is with us. He knows in advance that all this is going to happen and how it's going to happen. We have that great resource, so we don't have to be afraid, but still, it's awe-inspiring what's going on today. I mean, let's call it a computer, but it's a supercomputer, controlling finance, controlling the military, controlling planning, social planning, agriculture, banking, everything you can possibly think of by that brain.
Right, exactly. And again, these are the things that you need to pull off the events of the 7-year tribulation that the Antichrist is going to do. They're happening on a global basis. How is one guy and his evil religious cohort, the false prophet, literally going to micromanage the planet? How are they going to know when people are speaking and obeying and not obeying, whether they're for him or against him, whether they obey the command to worship him or not? How are so many people going to be annihilated in such a short amount of time? How is he going to control what people do? How is he going to control the global economy? How is he going to control what people buy and sell? Literally, on a global basis. You would have to somehow tie in every product, every person. Well, guess what? That's here. But again, my point is, you could have the technology to literally microchip the planet, which is already here. But Gary, think about that. This is on a global scale. Who's going to run that back in? You can't hire enough people. Guess what? But you can do it with AI. Wow. And that's here right now.
On and on and on and on and on it goes. All the categories of human life picked up, snapped up, I should say, by AI.
Yeah.
And you're going to like it, right? Because, hey, it's so much easier now. Something is doing it for me. Right. And I don't have to worry.
Well, and that's how it's being pitched. That's how people are going, well, what's the big deal with AI? It's kind of cool. I mean, and whether people realize it or not, they're already utilizing AI. AI, when you go to a search engine, it's not somebody in the background doing that database. That's AI that's doing that.
Yeah.
When you're speaking to your phone using Siri or Cortana or whatever, or you're speaking to your home device, Alexa, that's AI that's doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And those are just easy examples. By the way, to break it down, there's 3 categories of AI. And I'm convinced they're not just here, they're They're not coming, they're already here. The first one's called weak AI. And this is kind of funny, it's like weak AI. Weak AI would be the examples of what I just talked about, Gary. And that would be like your phone, Siri, Cortana, or Alexa.
Yeah.
Okay? But that so-called weak AI, Google, and we actually share the video clip on the DVDs, Google, just with their weak AI, are now offering an AI appointment setter, right, that you could have, that speaks in an actual human voice. But it not only speaks in an actual human voice, it literally will call human people and make your appointment. And we share it on tape. And so they give an example. This lady says, make an appointment for a haircut. So the AI calls, it's on tape, calls the haircut place. The human lady picks up, hey, how can I do it? And they say, hi, I'd like to make an appointment for Sue, blue, whatever. And then the human doesn't know that they're talking to an AI. It's that realistic. And so then they say, okay, well, when would you like to come in? They say, well, how about Tuesday? And then they say, well, we don't have that open. And so how about Thursday? And so the AI is looking at the calendar of the human, and they go, okay, that would work. And they set up, and they say, they buy, and it even does, it pauses like a real human. The human did not know they were talking to an AI. Gary, that's weak AI. Then they have what's called strong AI.
Yeah, it's sort of like Siri.
Yes.
Everybody takes that for granted.
Right. But they don't understand the biblical ramifications. What we're seeing and we're already immersed in, that's why it's called the AI invasion. It's invading everything, but we're taking it for granted, and what we want to do is get people equipped. No. This isn't just cool, eclectic, convenient. This is what you need to pull off the events of the 7-year tribulation. And as born-again Christians, let's get equipped, because if anything, like you said, we shouldn't be afraid of this. Now, what's crazy is you look at the AI that's already out there. It's in multitude of forms. But AI is not only going rogue, AI is already calling itself God, right? It's acting like God. It's pitching itself to be mankind's new savior. And we document all this. Right now, and we document all this, there's already what's called the first church of artificial intelligence.
Really?
Yes, and they consider it a God, and they worship it. They have their own gospel, their own manual. They're out there witnessing to people. And they say it's only logical. Then this is their terms. They say, what else do you call something other than God that's billions of times smarter than you? And then they mock the one and only God of the Bible, and they say that, well, at least with this AI God, that when you talk to it, it will listen to you, as if the one and only real God doesn't. But anyway, that's already here. It's coding and permeating. Right now, believe it or not, there's AI judges, right? And these are not people. They're holograms controlled by AI, and in real time, it is the one that's doing the cases, the judicial cases. AI right now is judging people like God. You look at the headlines from around the world, Gary. AI is being pitched as the planetary's new savior. It's going to save the trees. It's going to save the bees. It's going to save the whales. It's going to keep people from poaching. It's going to predict disasters and volcanoes and earthquakes. Even in a disaster, it will know what to do at any given time to do it efficiently, to save life. It'll even prevent suicides. It'll do all this stuff. It's the panacea, prevent nuclear warfare and all this. It's being pitched as mankind's savior, and people are looking to AI to save the planet. Then, this was wild. AI is, quote, breeding people like God. Well, that's crazy. We got it on tape, Gary. I kid you not. The people developing it, they admitted this. It was creepy and scary all at the same time. They said people don't realize that AI is the one that's running all these dating apps and dating sites. These aren't humans making the decisions. It's AI. And he admits that means that AI is the one that's doing the selection process of getting these people together to then breed and have children. And then he joked, and then some of those children further help develop AI. I mean, it's doing the selection process. But then that was creepy enough. So he says AI is breeding humans now to what it wants. Then he says this, we don't even know how it works. It's on tape. And yet we're immersed in this, we don't realize it, and it's running the back end. But AI, and we document this, AI is also right now calling itself God. And this is in print, and this is on video, and we share different types that's doing it, and it's basically saying, I am, speaking of itself.
Could I interrupt to read
Yes.
a Bible verse?
Exactly.
And I want you to comment on this. This is 2 Thessalonians 2:4. The Antichrist opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God.
Yeah.
Could this guy be using some form of artificial intelligence?
Well, you keep reading, and there's also going to be an image of the Antichrist, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so
Yeah.
that people are going to worship, right?
The image.
And I'm convinced that I think AI is going to have a play in that. And yet it just so happens that same AI is now claiming the phrase, the biblical phrase, Exodus 3, John 8, right? That God said is his name. I am. I am. Tell them that I am. Moses said, he told Moses to the Israelites, tell them that I am sent you. And then Jesus takes that statement that he is God, because he is, and that's why they wanted to kill him, stone him, because he
Right.
claimed to be God by saying, I am.
I am.
AI, Gary, is doing that. It's saying, I am. It's crazy. Now, go to the image. When you combine not just 3D hologram technology, but when you combine it with AI, and we document this, and I'm telling you, you got to see the video clip, right? And AI with holograms is getting so sophisticated. I'm not joking, Gary. They can create any image of anybody at any age, from baby to adult, from young person to elderly, you name it. It is so realistic. You could literally, it's not cartoonish, it's none of that stuff. It's so real, you could literally see the pores in their skin, the individual hairs on it's so realistic. Now, that's crazy enough as it is. But you combine this with AI, and it's not just a realistic image of anybody you want, including the Antichrist.
Yeah.
But, which then could speak and communicate around the world. But it's not pre-scripted speech, right? This AI, and we give an example, and this was out of Australia. This AI, they showed an AI baby, right? And they were teaching it. And Gary, you got to see this. The guy says, "Let me show you. It's not just the image. It looks like a real baby, you know, like a 2-year-old." And he says, "Hold up a picture." So it's in the computer screen. This AI virtual baby looking thing, toddler, and he holds up a picture of a dog. He just holds it up. He says, "First get the attention." He's going, "Hi AI baby." That's what he did. And so the AI looks at him, right? And the frown, the features, the alert, the eye, it's just like a real person. And he holds it up and he goes, "Hi, baby, what's this?" And it literally in real time goes, "Puppy." It knew what it was seeing through the computer screen. He holds up another one, "Apple," right? This thing in real time was communicating through the computer screen via an image with this guy, having an actual conversation with it. Gary, now you fast forward to this image of the Antichrist that says it speaks and causes all who don't do what he says, i.e. worship the image, working with the false, that you're going to die.
Yeah.
The technology's here.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking of something else. The technology is global. They're putting up so many satellites, sometimes launching them 100 at a time these days.
Yeah.
This global satellite network makes AI omniscient, omnipotent,
Right.
omnipresent, wherever you go all over the planet. And in truth, you've got a false god here.
Right. Well, and that's another watershed moment. AI technology, the desire for AI has been around for many decades, and we document that in the history section.
Yeah.
But what makes it different to create true AI, which is to mimic the human brain, and then of course it becomes a super brain, takes over, is you need a massive amount of information. And this is what they learned decades ago. There's no shortcuts to mimicking the human brain. You have to hand feed AI information every day. Just like our brain as it develops, what do? We receive information through the 5 senses, the eyes, the ears, the taste, the touch, all that stuff. They said, if you're going to create a true electronic brain, you have to do that. But you need massive amounts of information to feed it to make this brain. Well, guess what we got now, Gary? Even in the last 5 years, through emails, through search engine databases, through all the databases on all of our purchases, buying habits, the profiles that are being built on social media, all the photos, everything, all that is being fed. It's called big data, which they call the new oil to feed AI. Now we have the data to create this superhuman brain, and it's working. It's developing these crazy abilities to literally micromanage the planet. Go back to the aspect, of the image of the beast, but keep reading. It says what? And then they're going to implement something called the mark of the beast. And if you don't take that mark, then you can't buy and sell. Well, stop and think about that. That's a global basis. How is one guy, right, going to know and have the ability to control, literally micromanage every single product, every single person, every single potential purchase, and then have the ability to control the permission of that system, whether they can or cannot, and then the database is, did that person obey? Are they Well, think about it, Gary. Right now, you mentioned the satellites. Right now, again, for the first time in history, just in time for this, AI can run the whole global back-end system.
Yes.
The satellites producing what I call the matrix, and then even recently with the 5G network that gave a major upgrade.
Again, I got to interrupt because I'm sitting here. The Matrix. You know, the famous sci-fi movie that literally changed the flow of history. It sort of got people thinking a different way.
Right.
But you use the term matrix. That's biblical.
Right. Well, it is because, again, you need a matrix system to connect every product, every person, every bank account on a global basis. Gary, that's here now. Yeah. With the 5G network, before that, you didn't have the speeds to be able to create what they call, it's called the IoT, or the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things is basically everything on the planet, from your home to the city to your vehicles, wherever you go, and dare I say even the person eventually with a mark in your right hand or your forehead, it ties you into this global matrix system. And in that global matrix system, without the microchip, you will not be able to buy and sell. That's the mark of the beast system. And AI, and with the internet, and AI running the communication system, AI is running the satellites, AI is running the internet, AI is the one that can manage all these individualized microchips of everything, including people around the planet. It's here now, just in time for the mark of the beast scenario. And most people have no clue how far it's gone, but it's here now. And that's, Gary, that's why we got to get equipped. This isn't just something cool, it's something eclectic. This is a technology that you need to pull off these events. It's here now, just in time for the 7-year tribulation.
Let's pause just a second, Billy, and then come back and recap just a bit on the final countdown. 2 volumes, by the way, but I want you to be especially aware of the final countdown DVD set. And you have to see to believe some of the things that Billy is talking about. Let's pause for a moment, let you know how you can obtain your own DVD set.
As you've heard here today, AI is in the process of taking over every aspect of society. Self-driving cars, robotic surgery, lightning-fast communication. It all sounds so good. But the Bible tells us how these seemingly helpful benefits to society will be used to usher in the dark agenda of the Antichrist in the future. Google, Facebook, Microsoft, unmanned drones, military robots, exploding dragonflies. Where exactly is all of this high technology taking us? And where does the mark of the beast fit into this agenda? Billy Crone has taken the study of artificial intelligence to a whole new level with his 2 new books and a companion DVD set that explains it all. AI Invasion reveals things that will catch most people by surprise, even Christians who study the prophecies of the Bible. Billy accumulated so much advanced information that he needs 2 books to share all of the details. And his DVD set includes 12 DVDs and 24 separate studies. It is the most comprehensive study on artificial intelligence and the Antichrist system ever compiled. The lengthy 2-book study is available in what we're calling the AI Book Package for your gift of $50 or more to Prophecy Watchers. We're also making the 12 DVD set available in the AI DVD Package for your gift of $50 or more to the ministry. We've included a special bonus with either package, a DVD by Gary Stearman, The Rapture is the Resurrection, an hour-long defense of the pre-tribulation rapture of the church. If the end times are still a bit confusing to you, this DVD will help you see the big picture. We do believe that Jesus is coming soon. For your gift of $100 or more, we'll send you the Artificial Intelligence package with both Billy's books, the 12 DVD set, plus 2 bonus DVDs from Gary Stearman, The Rapture is the Resurrection, and his brand new DVD, The Last Trump, a study of the raptured trumpet of 1 Corinthians 15. Just call the toll-free number on your screen or visit our online bookstore to stand with us today. The new electricity has arrived, but it's hardly the long-awaited utopia the world imagines. There's a sinister plan at work here. Some call it the New World Order. Others call it the Great Reset. The Bible calls it the tribulation. Part of our mission statement at Prophecy Watchers is to be an encouragement to you and to keep as many people as possible out of the tribulation. Will you help us support that critical mission with a gift to our ministry today? Thanks for watching today, and as always, we hope the program was a blessing and encouragement to you. Even so, come Lord Jesus.
I think you're going to want to avail yourself of all this information because it's happening. It's happening now. And Billy, our problem sitting here right now is there's just too much to say.
Yeah.
You really can't put all of the drama of this thing, the nearness of it, into words. We need an hour and a half. We need 2 hours.
Yeah.
My head is spinning when I think about the ramifications of this. In particular, the Antichrist system. I just looked at 2 Thessalonians, and I'm looking at it again, and I'm thinking, this puts a whole new slant on everything we've studied in the Bible forever.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's why I'm convinced, I'll use this statement, I believe that the birth of AI is just of a big watershed moment, prophetic prophecy sign, as Israel becoming a nation in 1948.
Wow.
I really do, because when you understand what it's doing, the capabilities, and then you look at the scripture, you're going like, wow, we couldn't do this before until AI came on the scene. Well, it's here now. You mentioned, the mark of the beast we talked about. AI is also running the whole global financial system, the global banking. It's also running the global stock markets, your personal accounts, your taxes.
The Great Reset.
And that's another thing. How are these guys going to do this, Gary? You could have this, we're going to have a great reset. We're going to control all the economy. We're going to control what you buy and sell, in essence. We're going to control what kind of money. Remember they said, you won't own anything, but you're going to be happy. What? So they can have this idea all they want, but guess what? How are you going to run it?
Right.
AI. AI gives them the ability to do this crazy great reset they're talking about. They call it the Great Reset. The Bible calls it the Great Antichrist Kingdom, if you will, right? That is going to happen in the 7-year tribulation. But AI gives them that ability to do that. In fact, Gary, talk about creepy. These guys, we got them on tape, these global bankers, and I'm convinced they're going to use AI to do it. It's already running the back-end system. They said that it's like somebody's following a script, dare I say, Revelation 13, mark the beast. They said, and how are we going to tie everybody into this global financial system? You know what they said? We're going to microchip people. And the microchips are going to be connected through a cashless society that they're creating, that AI is running on a global basis. And without that microchip, you will not be able to buy and sell. And then they even said this, it's on tape. They said that what we will be doing, if you don't do what we say, quote, we will shut off your chip.
Wow.
That's why they want to build this. And whether they've read Revelation 13 or not, Gary, that we know biblically that's where it's headed. This is not just here, it's being put into place. It's not just their desire. They need AI to pull it off, and that's what they're doing with it.
And Billy, just to add to that, I've been reading that those chips can now be assimilable into your system. That is to say, they can sort of melt their way into your whole system by injection. Mm-hmm. And your chip then becomes a whole body experience, if you will. The technology's coming. Yeah. And faster than you can possibly imagine, folks.
Well, in all that we've talked about, Gary, again, this is my rule of thumb, if you want to freak people out even more. Everything that we share in here is completely, as you said, well documented, on video, in the books, and it's what I call over-the-counter information. This is what you admit in public you really have. But Gary, you and I both know that that's not all that they have. They piecemeal it. It's soft disclosure, a little bit here. The general rule that I have anything that you share with us in public, including about AI and how far it's advanced, we are literally anywhere from 20 to 30 to 40 to possibly 50 years behind what you really have. And if you're this far and you'll admit it, what do you really got? That's the kind of stuff that we need to be aware of.
Which is why the movers and the shakers of this world feel that they've got everything under control. They don't. We've read the book.
Right.
And we know how it's going to end. Billy, thanks so much for this information. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary. It's always great to be on.
I'm Gary Stearman. Hey, you keep watching. We are.